자, 데이빗 김 후보님
네.
재작년, 그러니까 3년 전, 2년 전이었나? 2년 전에 이어서 또 출마, 이번에 두 번째 도전인데
네.
재작년에 많은 한인 사회 관계자들을 많이 놀래켰어요.
네네.
성적이 예상보다 훨씬 더 좋고 사실 조금만 더 표가 있었으면 지미 고메즈까지 떨어뜨릴 수 있었고 지미 고메즈가 그때 이후로 정치적으로 많이 흔들렸다고 그러거든요. What do you think about how different is this year's election compared to last time?
이제 작년에는 이제 아쉽게도 많이 졌지만 요번에 이제 저희가 다시 도전하는 이유가 아직까지는 지미 고메즈가 이제 저희 때문에 이제 물론 왼쪽으로 조금 움직이셨지만 아직까지는 그런 큰 변화가 아직까지 보이지 않아요. 그래서 저희가 요번에 도전을 또 하는데 더 어려운 점이 있다면은 지미 고메즈가 그 자기가 어느 정도 이제 일을 하고 있다는 거를 이제 performative politics를 지금 하고 있어요. 그래서 거기에 이제 우리가 저희하고 지미 고메즈가 좀 더 distinguishing 하는 데에서 이제 좀 어려운 점들이 있을 텐데 I think we have a really great chance at winning this election.
그리고 내가 이제 federal level이잖아요. congressional
네.
seat이 federal level이니까 이제 national issue를 다룬다고요.
네네.
Right? 그 우리 지역구를 대변해서
네.
한인타운 지역구를 대변해서
네.
지금 우크레인하고 러시아 시츄에이션
네.
있는데 저기 오늘 바이든이 금지했잖아요. 러시아산 원유,
네.
오일
네네.
임포트를 이제 ban했는데
네.
이 이슈에 대해서 어떻게 생각하는지 궁금해요.
근데 지금 현지에 대해서는 지금 물론 러시아가 I think it's very. Can I talk about this one in English?
Yeah, English.
Okay.
Go ahead. It's
Okay.
okay. You can just go ahead. Yeah.
Oh my
But we're gonna
gosh.
put captions.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no, I think it's very important to be very careful on how to respond to Russia. In terms of, I know that everyone is doing sanctions, but I think also just doing full-out sanctions isn't also always the answer too. I think there needs to be more talks and diplomacy with Russia directly to see what's going on instead of just aggressively doing sanctions as well. Although in the beginning it made sense because we wanted to avoid war at all costs, I don't think the continued way is to just continue to do sanctions as either, because I think that's just another form of war, not physical war, but it's economic and war in that sense. And so I would pull back on that a little bit.
Are you for Keystone XL pipeline or against?
Against.
You're against it?
Yes.
Why is that?
Um,
Because America's importing from Russia, you know that, right?
Right.
America's the number one importing oil and gas from Russia.
yeah.
And many people say if they open up Keystone XL pipeline, that we don't need to rely on Russia or either countries that are hostile to America, for instance, Venezuela or Iran. These are
I mean, well,
countries
for
that
for
we're gonna
those,
buy it anyway.
right.
And then climate change, I mean, we can't just pretend that United States is under Earth, right? All those countries are under inside Earth too, right? So they're doing all that. So we need oil anyway. Why can't we create jobs here, Keystone XL pipeline, and be energy independent?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's moving us towards being clean and renewable energy, we can do that. But I mean, I think in terms of the plans right now, it's not plans that show for that right now. If there's more development in that we can go ahead and look into that a little bit more.
Renewable energy, you mean by electric or solar? Or,
Electric, solar, right?
Well, solar didn't create a lot of jobs here. I'm just saying.
Right. But that's also because there hasn't been a lot of prioritization and a lot of funding towards that. They're not really hands-on onto that and making that. If everybody were to make that their number one goal and mission, I feel like we could be doing so much more in solar power energy and exploring that. But I don't think we have done enough to explore that.
So you support importing from Venezuela, countries like Iran, which has been hostile to America? Because I think that's what Biden's plan is. Instead of relying on Russia importing from
Well, I understand that we can't immediately go off of oil, but if that's I understand. Yeah, so I wouldn't be completely against it, but I do understand the practicality of it, and I understand that portion. So if it does come to it, I would support in that regard.
Were you supportive of defund the police movement 2 years ago? You were, right?
I was, yes.
Yeah. What do you think about it now? Because it seems like the pendulum is swinging the other way.
Well, in regards to, I know that local media has been saying that there's been increasing crime in downtown LA and other areas. But again, I don't think the issue is whether or not there's a presence of police on the streets or not, because that's all based on a broken windows police theory and a war on drugs faulty theory. I think we need to go deeper into why are these acts occurring? Like, are we getting people the help and resources they need? And so, although I haven't used the defund the police terminology for the past year and a half, but I do talk about, hey, what do we do if we reimagine our resources and shift them towards care management services? So, for example, an illustration of that, people think that if we have more police, everything's solved. But in 1990 and 1991, there were 40 plus Koreans that were killed. 17 plus of those were robberies. Police didn't help Koreans back then. And so I think there's this false notion that if there's more police, the Korean community will be protected. But no, in 1991 and 1992, we had 40 plus Koreans killed despite police being there. So I think the problem is much bigger than whether or not do we support the police or not. It comes to a problem of what systemic issues are there and what's causing all of this to happen. And I think it's all really linked to this neglect of ethnic, colored, minority communities in LA, even though we make up the majority.
Okay. But isn't that just 30 years ago? And they didn't build up, the Olympic station here, and we wanted police presence. It's not like we didn't want it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, I know that like in the beginning of the pandemic last year, was it 2019 or 2020, there was going to be a march in Koreatown, and obviously a lot of people had these triggers that came up, and me too. I went on 6th Street in Vermont just to make sure that no march was happening and whatnot. And I do agree that, yeah, the Koreans did felt that they need more visibility and presence. But I mean, in regards to what you're seeing right now with police having police brutality and shooting into crowds and whatnot, I don't think that's necessarily the answer to everything.
You think police brutality is still a big issue?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
target
Yeah.
blacks and blacks and Latinos.
Yeah, I have a lot of civil rights attorney friends that are still representing black and brown clients who are still having their rights.
So you are still supportive of this movement? Defund the police in general, their cause.
I understand what their cause is, and I'm very sympathetic to it.
Okay. This year, in April 29th, we're gonna have 30th anniversary of the LA riot. These days they call it differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unrest, right? Civil
Mm-hmm.
unrest. What is your thought on that? And recently, you had Representative Karen Bass saying that it was a miracle that it happened, that we could get rid of all the Korean stores. Did you know about that news too?
Mm-hmm.
About her I want you to talk about her comment about it. I think she recently privately apologized, but not publicly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
what's your comment on that?
I think a lot of the this is where the media really needs to start changing it. Up until now, the documentaries, the narratives have been about Black Korean race relations, but I think it really needs to start to change. And so I'm working on a documentary video project where we're focusing on how white corporate media really inflamed the Korean-Black relations with the Sunja-do video over the Rodney King trial video, when the dates were completely different, and how Koreatown was used as a buffer to prevent everybody else from coming up to the white neighborhoods. And so I think that's something that should really be talked about, and in terms of departing from the Black versus Korean relations, and really kind of showing what that looks like on the Korean end, in terms of how the Korean communities experienced all of that. And so in terms of Karen Bass's comment, what did you want with that one?
No, she said that she always wanted to get rid of the liquor stores because a lot of crime happens. A lot of drug dealing happens there and a lot of illegal activity. So she said it was like a miracle that that they were all removed. So and she went out of her way to block them reopening their business.
So that too, I think that's where leaders like her also need to get educated on these liquor stores. These were the first businesses that our Korean immigrants and ancestors were able to open up. They were barely making ends meet, and they were the ones that actually were helping out the communities in different ways too. And so I think there definitely needs to be a re-education of, I know a lot of somebody was schooling me the other day about how the black leaders back then also pointed fingers at the Korean community and told the Korean community you deserved it. And even kind of looking at that, it's like, are you guys understanding where the finger pointing should be had? It's not to be had at the Korean community, it's to be had at the bigger system and the leaders in place. You guys are the ones who are continuing to enable it. So there was that, I think in 1990 or 1991, that the black mayor, and there was a shooting where there was a shooting that happened, and the black mayor had some settlement where the Korean liquor store owners really got the short end of the stick. And so I think historically, like, we haven't really stood up and started speaking for ourselves, and I think this is a great opportunity to do that. And so yeah, comments like what Karen Bass made are completely inappropriate and should be called out.
이제 한인타운을 대표하는 연방 하원의원이 되잖아요, 당선되면.
네.
그럼 한인 사회를 위해서 무엇을 해줄 수 있는지, 특히 이제 한인타운은 이 전역에서 한인이 가장 많은 지역구잖아요.
Yeah. So I think
한국말로도 되고 영어로도. Yeah, so
네.
go ahead.
네, 우선 5가지라고 봅니다. 이제 저희 한인 사회에는. So the first one is, I really feel that our Korean community lacks resources, knowledge of resources. So if you look at the county and city languages and everything, I mean, yes, there are some resources in Korean, but they're mostly all English and Spanish. So if you look at unionizing, Korean people, we don't know how to unionize because there's no resources for that. In terms of getting state assistance or federal assistance, Korean people, they don't know where to get that because, again, the resources are in Spanish and English again. Or whether it be with a lot of, this district was the district that received the lowest number in PPP loans out of a lot of the districts in LA and California.
Lowest across country, I mean,
In
California.
in California and across the country, it's one of the lowest districts that receive PPP. And that's because a lot of our constituents and small business owners have no idea. So one of the things I really want to do is bring reform to the Small Business Administration and give small business advisors to small businesses that do want an advisor to help them with that. And number two, make more language justice access in Korean for federal resources. Number three, there's a lot of undocumented people in our Korean community, and myself as an immigration attorney, I clearly know like the lack of protections that they have at work. They're paid under the table, they're paid sub-minimum wage. So really fighting for their needs and giving them temporary protection status right now on the undocumented side. And then the fourth, Koreatown, the per capita incomes have been increasing, but they're still in the 30,000s right now. And although Koreatown is not occupied majority Korean, there's still a lot of Koreans here. And it shows you something of, hey, our communities actually need some uplifting with that. And so I think a basic income would do wonders for many neighborhoods of our district, because our district is the top 15 poorest district of the 435 congressional districts in the country. And so I think something like
ranking again?
the top 15 poorest congressional districts of the 435.
Is it poorer than Compton, right?
The per capita incomes are similar, yeah, because we have Westlake, Boyle Heights, East LA, and all of Skid Row and downtown.
Koreans living here, their income is very low too, right?
Yeah, their income is very low too. Yeah, so universal basic income would do wonders. And then also taking off, I think with the small business support, really if we were to take off the healthcare, take off the benefits and have the government pay for that, how much more life would that give to our Korean business owners? And then the last one is for the Korean Peninsula, working towards peace on the Korean Peninsula and ending the Korean War. I'm not sure why Jimmy Gomez has not supported or co-sponsored.
You support that?
I would support it, yeah. I'm not sure why Jimmy Gomez has not yet co-sponsored the bill to end the Korean War yet. He hasn't done it in any of the previous sessions nor in the current session. I did ask him about that in March. He wouldn't answer me when we had our one-on-one meeting.
I think Biden's against it too, right?
Yeah, and so he basically does. I know, and he was explaining to me that there's certain ranks and files that they have to follow within the party, but he didn't say much beyond that. So maybe it has something to do with Biden, maybe it doesn't. So
what do you think about people who say that means that American troops has to leave, UN, troops has to leave from South Korea, and it in South Korea not having nuclear weapons like North Korea would endanger South Korea? Did you think about that?
Well, I mean, I definitely
South Korea doesn't have nukes.
Right. No, I definitely appreciate the presence of the American military there, in that sense. But I'm not advocating for a complete pull of the military. I think we can work that in terms of face and how long that happens. But in terms of working towards at least a state or solution towards peace while we still have presence there, I think it's doable.
Because I think the meaning of end of war pretty much means Americans got to leave. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. But I don't
see it like that. But.
I think because then, you know, if war is not there, why be there in the first place? If the war is over, I mean, that's what many.
But the U.S. has military bases everywhere, so.
So what do you think about rising crime right now in Los Angeles? You know, murder rate, homicide rate, rape. It's all going up, and many people think that it's too soft on crime. That we need more policing. What's your thought on that? You see smash and grab on TV all the time.
Well, definitely for violent crimes, I'm not saying to get rid of law enforcement. Law enforcement is needed for violent crimes, but in terms of, again, the solution isn't just increasing funding, it's finding out what the causes are and why people are, I mean, in terms of, you don't see, although, like, in terms of whether it be with robberies or whether it be with assaults at night, like those are the things that we need to talk about. Like, what's causing it? Mental health is causing it. Then why aren't we talking about mental health? Why is it so hard for some people to get mental health care coverage and that? So that's more a long-term solution. But while we're talking about the short-term solutions, we also need to talk about the long-term solutions. But because we've only been talking about short-term solutions the past decade, we always continue to come to the same problem, and it's always just more policing. So then 10 years from now, is the answer going to be more policing again? I don't think that's the answer, right?
Do you think if they get psychotherapy and all that people can get better?
Yeah, on a grand scale, a lot of people, when they're in a survival flight mode, a lot of us are operating in the parasympathetic or in the sympathetic state, or we're in our flight or freeze mode, and a lot of people are.
So do you support George Gascon's zero bail policy? You support it, right?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
That's kind of huge, I think a lot of our readers don't. The zero bail. I think they really, have an issue with that. Because many of so I talked with some mayoral candidates, and many of them say because of the zero, they're pretty much against Gascon. That some of not all of them, but because they hear these stories from cops where they arrest them, they're supposed to get charged, they don't get charged, they get out, so they feel really humiliated. I heard that they personally feel so humiliated arresting people, get back on the street. Isn't that all? But I think we gotta always think about the suspects too. Their mental health and all that. But how about the people, the victims? Look at all the Korean Americans who got victimized. You know that, right? Probably 80-90% are from blacks. I saw every single video. It's probably 95, 99, almost 99 to be honest with you. I just saw one video that wasn't, it was a Hispanic, but all the other 99% was pretty much black. And according to the Justice Department data,
but that's not
blacks committing crime against Koreans, Asians, and Asians per ratio of Asians committing crime against blacks, it's 80 times higher on blacks committing crime. I did an interview with LA Times and I said this to them. What do you think about that? Those data? Can we kind of ignore all that too?
No, I'm not saying we ignore the statuses in that, but I think it's also like for you to bring up the mayoral candidates as a reason isn't really a strong reason for me, because they're all establishment candidates anyway who are career politicians.
Well, one is kind of considered an outsider, but yeah.
But yeah, no. With that being said, I think we need to move towards a system that isn't such a carceral system in that sense, but it focuses on rehabilitating. So I'm not saying like completely ignored, like have your community safety systems in place.
I think you have a good long-term plan. That's mental health and all.
Right.
But right now, I don't think LA City was really the leader of long-term plans. If we were, we would not have had these many homeless people, on the streets. So it's kind of, it's urgent. It's very urgent. I think this is an urgent issue. The crimes, even homeless people committing crimes, so I was wondering what your plan will be about, those. It's kind of, don't you not kind of think?
We need to give.
You see all these Asian hate crime being committed.
Happening mostly in New York.
Violence, yeah. LA too, and even San Francisco too. You know that, right? So, I was wondering don't you kind of think they should be punished? And the zero bail policy is kind of, letting them off the hook.
But if you think of that as a form of preventing these crimes from happening, I don't think that's not the prevention way. That's in terms of dealing with each case as they
Yeah,
come.
I mean, because it's urgent. I mean,
Yeah,
we can't automatically brainwash
Right.
them, or you know what I mean.
Right.
For lack of the better word.
Right. So I mean, for those extreme cases, yeah, they're finding out a separate protocol or standard
Mhm.
for that. But then just to go harsh on every single one doesn't mean that it'll go away, because that number could just immediately rise as well. But yeah, no, definitely putting in community safety. Like the other day, I was walking with a community safety walkers throughout the neighborhood, and but yeah, no, I do agree that there should be some enforcement of sentencing and confinement for those who have committed serious crimes, for sure.
Do you have the data of last time's election? You know, how many Korean Americans voted for you? You know,
I do not.
Yeah.
We're not able to break down to
Oh,
that
you don't.
ethnicity, but pretty much from downtown and everything west of downtown,
You won.
we won the
Yeah,
majority.
uh-huh.
So downtown and west of
I think
downtown.
you lost east.
And then north of downtown, it was 50-50, and then east of downtown, it was all Jimmy.
Well, Jimmy there.
Yeah.
East of downtown
It's
is
Boyle Heights, El Sereno.
a little bit upper echelon.
Boyle Heights, El Sereno, Lincoln Heights.
Okay. What do you think is Jimmy Gomez's biggest weakness?
Biggest weakness is he takes more corporate PAC and special interest money than a majority of members in the House and Senate. And the reason why is he sits on the Ways and Means Committee, so he takes money from banks, from every automobile manufacturer, big farm, big oil, everything, because he's on a powerful committee. And so I think that's what keeps him from really, like, he's not like your proactive like AOC or Liz Cheney who's always putting bills. He's he just sits there, and the reason why he sits there is he can't do much because he has so many donors. If he does one bill, his other donors will get mad about it. So that's why he doesn't really have a lot of legislation coming out of his office.
So a lot of congressmen, they like to be a member of Ways and Means Committee. You know that, right?
Yeah.
And you know one of the main reasons why they want to go there?
Because it's a powerful committee.
Because you don't need to do fundraising all as much.
Yeah.
That is an automatic cash cow.
Yeah.
You think you're gonna be different? You will not be that way.
No, I won't be. I won't be. Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason why we have these do nothing politicians keep on getting reelected is it's not the people that's reelecting him. So that by me, let's say if I'm on the Ways and Means Committee and I don't take any money, I'm not gonna get reelected if the people don't think I'm doing a good job. They're gonna vote me out. But for him, even if he does a bad job, he's never gonna get voted out because his money's protecting him. So I think that's the difference. Like, we need leaders who can be voted out. But with leaders in his position, if he does good or bad, he can't be voted out because his money's protecting him.
Did you get endorsement from AOC or the squad? You know, those members.
No, I have not. No.
Didn't you kind of seek it last time around?
I saw it. Justice Democrats, we did have 2 interviews already, but Justice Democrats, they're really trying to more focus on the red versus blue seats, and that's what they told. That's what they shared. They're really trying to focus on that.
How about Bernie or Elizabeth Warren?
Bernie Sanders did not endorse anyone in our race last cycle, although he did endorse Jimmy in the election before.
He did?
He did endorse Jimmy in 2018. In 2020, he decided not to because he learned about our campaign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So 2018 is that's when Robert ran.
I think
2018
Robert
is
ran,
Robert ran 2017.
17. That was a special election.
Oh,
Because, you
I
know,
remember that was a special election.
Yes.
Yes.
So so he takes too much. Can you list some of the companies' money that he gets? Jimmy Gomez. Do you
Jimmy
know?
Gomez?
Yeah.
Amgen, Blue Cross, Lockheed, huge.
Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed Martin, defense contractor.
He's really in deep. Right?
There's a whole list of military defense money that he takes. The Lockheed Martin, the UPS, everything from Ford, automobile, GM, the biggest pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer, everything.
Do you support like critical race theory? You do.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you know? No, because what I'm trying to say is like, I think 2 years ago you did really well, 47%. That's huge. You could have really won, you know.
Yeah.
If you probably had a little bit of more donor money, I think, you know, you had a good chance.
Yeah.
But I think now I feel like the tide is a little bit changing. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. When I look at what the election in Virginia you know, and also the election in Seattle, the city attorney race, you know, first Republican in like decades in Seattle because of the crime rate, and I think CRT too. I mean, I won't mention it, but I think what's going on for you is the Korean American community. You know, they usually vote no matter what kind of policies. You know, if you're Korean American, you have a Kim, and you have a good last name Kim, right? So they would just just stamp there. I think a lot of them will. But you know, do you have those internal worries?
I
in your
think
camp? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I understand because we've actually pushed Jimmy. So for example, he was not for legalization of marijuana before, but after we ran, now he is. He was not for any credit payments to people. Now he's supporting income tax child credit. He was not for just many different things. So now he's come more left. So it is harder for us to distinguish in policy wise, but I think on an overall scale and in terms of effective responsive representation, he's still lacking. He's promised the Korean community that he'll have one Korean person in his office. To this day, there's no Korean member in his office yet.
Really?
There's no Korean member in his office.
No deputy?
No deputy whatsoever. But then because he heard that I'm running again, now he's going around taking pictures with the Korean community again. And so it's just very telling, like you can see everything. And I know that, yeah, so in that sense, I think I do understand it. But on the flip side though, last cycle we went in with 0 votes. This cycle we're still going in with at least 95,000 votes. And yes, it's a midterm election, not that many people will vote. But then also this year, mail-in ballots are automatic. Every single person will get a mail-in ballot. So we actually have no idea what the voter turnout will be. But I think for us, it's just building upon the people that did vote for us and getting out to those people who didn't vote for us.
And
so we're just focusing on that part.
And you also support universal basic income, and you tried it, right?
We tried it, yeah.
With how many families?
We tried it. How many?
And did you use that with your campaign fund to do that?
We partnered up with a different fund,
Okay.
and from that fund, they were able to give $800 a month for 3 months.
How long did you test that?
It was for 3 months. $800 for 3 months.
How many families?
I believe it was 30 families. Yeah.
30 families.
30 families.
So what was their?
They filled out the survey. A lot of them were able to pay like immediate debt, but a lot of them didn't have money to pay for food and rent. So a lot of them didn't get evicted. So I think the main thing was they didn't get evicted. So UBI would totally help people from stopping evictions in that sense.
So what was their feedback? They all liked it?
They all loved it. They all loved it.
Okay. That was $800?
It was $800, right?
Oh, okay.
And then after that, then we saw the mayor's office then do its own UBI pilot, which was started several months after that.
Okay. What would you do? What would you say to the Korean American voters here? You know, why they should vote for you over Kim Gomez?
Yeah. Looking at my parents now, I completely understand all the heart, the energy, the sweat, the tears that poured into them immigrating to the States, for them trying to make a living here, for them trying to support us and have us get a good education. Even as adults right now, they're still worrying about us. And I would love for our parents, those who are watching, those who are reading the interview, to understand that I don't want our parents or our generation or the generations above us to have immigrated here for nothing. I bet all of them, after they pass, they want to see their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren all living good lives, whether it be economically, whether it be on a racial aspect of not receiving discrimination. And I don't think at this time that our parents can maum pyoni pass, because things aren't right for our generation yet. A lot of people for our generation, and this is something that I don't think Korean parents are talking about, because Korean parents try to save face a lot, but a lot of Korean children my age in their 30s and their 20s, a lot of them are swallowed up in student debt. And nobody talks about it because Korean parents are always trying to save face. They never talk about their problems or issues, and that's something that I think is the next thing that the Korean community probably will talk about, because we send all of our kids to these Ivy League schools with mounds of debt, but then yet they graduate and they don't really have incomes to help pay off that debt. And I think that's the thing that we need to start talking about. Or when we talk about, I've seen many Korean parents where they saved, they bought a house, but then they didn't have insurance and then they had a stroke. and so now they lost everything, and so now those children are doing 고생 and trying to take care of them, and so there's just a lot of ways where I feel like there's so much that can be done for a Korean community, and that's what I really want to protect. And
So you
help
want to
do.
waive the debt, the college debt? Did you say that?
Yeah.
before?
Yes, for sure.
If there's a bill,
Yes,
you would,
for sure.
you would support.
At least,
or-
and I wouldn't, and I'm not somebody to say like immediate, like I understand that there are people who might say, oh, immediate debt cancellation doesn't make sense. Well, if that's the case, then we should at least have some sort of 10 by 10 program that's offered to public interest, where in the public interest loan program, if you pay for 10 years every month, then your loans are forgiven. Why don't we have a similar program for those applicants who really need that as well? Because some of their jobs might not be paying as much, and they're paying student loan payments every month for 10 years, but they still have interest left. What do we do about those people then? So I think we really need to start talking about that more.
Can you talk about homelessness issue? You know, it's
Yeah.
increasing. Like, I think 2005, 2003, it used to be 10,000. Now they're still counting, but I think it might be over 60,000. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, well, with LA system, if you ever try to help a family get housing, it's super hard. I've tried to help at least 20 families get housing, just like personally, like when I'm in the community. You call LAH, you call 211. A lot of these places don't have immediate temporary housing. They tell you to call back within a 1 week or 2 weeks. But then you have somebody that you're calling for, and they need immediate housing now. What do you do for those situations? So our LA City actually does not have a system. If you personally try to get somebody housing, they don't have a good system at all. Like there's no beds available in that sense. So I think that the system needs to be cleaned up first. And then number two, once you do get them temporary housing, there's not enough permanent supportive housing transition programs to get them onto their feet. And so I think that needs to be focused on. And so I'm curious to see which mayoral candidate is really focusing on that. I know that LA rolled out its tiny homes.
Yeah, tiny homes.
Tiny
yeah.
homes.
what
But if
do
you look
thought
at that,
about
like, would you live in a tiny homes like this? I don't know. It's like half the size of this room. I mean, it's a good start. It's a good
I heard that
start.
it has a heater and an AC and shower and a lock.
Okay.
I mean, that's what Kevin DeLeon said. So
Yeah, but it's not like people still need dignity, and so that's fine. But then we also have public land where there's buildings that we own as the government. We can actually convert those buildings without spending too much money and convert those into units as well. And so I think with that, like, we can actually create a more comprehensive thing, but it'll only happen if we have local, city, state, and federal officials all talking together, because you see local people doing their own thing, county people doing their own thing, federal people not knowing what they're doing, and just requesting funding in general aspects without particularizing it. And so I really believe there needs to be talk amongst all levels of government in that sense.
okay. How about COVID situation? I think it is getting better right now, but your thoughts on that? Some people said that too much regulation with the masks. They don't want their kids wearing masks because kids have a better immune system than the older ones. I mean, just in general.
I
Do
think
you think California did a good job? Or
I think where we're at right now, we're doing a good job with relaxing things. It's not to say that go completely like don't care that it act like it doesn't exist anymore, but I think definitely still need to prepare on PPE supply. Also, sharing our technology with other people in the world, because I think it also comes to a global equity thing, because it's not just a US thing, because it started from people traveling. And so I think we also as America need to start sharing our technology with other countries too, so that there's more equity and access to pandemic kind of prevention and coverage in that. Where we're at right now domestically, I think we're doing a good job in terms of relaxing the conditions and monitoring it.
오케이, 끝으로 우리 독자들한테 한국말로
네.
한마디 해주세요. 뭐 투표해달라고 하고 또 your website,
Okay.
how people
I
can
see.
get involved in your campaign,
Okay.
more social media, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Looking at the camera.
Yeah, looking at the camera or looking at the
Okay.
왔다 갔다 해도 되고. Okay, yeah.
예, 안녕하세요 여러분. 안녕하세요 한인사회 여러분. 데이비드 킴 변호사입니다. 제가 재작년에 선거 후보로 출마를 했는데요. 제가 아쉽게도 이기지는 못했지만 저희가 47%로 많은 분들의 투표를 많이 얻었습니다. 그래서 요번에 저희가 재도전을 합니다. 그래서 요번 예비 선거가 6월 7일이고요. 꼭 투표를 해주시고 아시는 분들한테 꼭 얘기해 주시고 저희 웹사이트가 davidkim4ca.com davidkim4ca.com 방문해 주시고 거기서 후원해 주실 수 있고 volunteer 해 주실 수 있고 저에 대한 플랫폼도 더 읽으실 수 있습니다. 그래서 꼭 후원해 주시고요. 사랑해 주십시오. 감사합니다.
Okay, that's good. 감사합니다.
Oh my gosh.
수고하셨어요.